Welcome to the Kenya Wantamnotama Movement, or KWM podcast. Today we're doing a deep dive into something that's been stirring up a lot of conversation, a lot of urgency, really, and that's the Kenya Wantamnotama movement itself. Our main source for this discussion is a pretty powerful statement that's been circulating recently. It's from Police Constable Hiram Kimathi, and it was published and highlighted by the KWM. So, our mission today. We want to unpack what Kimathi is warning about, understand the KWM's call to action that stems from it, and really explore what this means potentially for every Kenyan.
Exactly. And it's interesting how the KWM features Kimathi's warning, isn't it? Sort of reframes the national situation. It's not just presented as, say, political opposition. By highlighting someone seemingly from within the system, they present it as a sign of a deeper crisis. So his personal safety, while obviously a huge concern, becomes symbolic in their narrative. The KWM portrays it as a stark indicator, they say, of a crisis threatening everyone. And for them, it's very clearly a call to action right now for the whole country.
Okay, let's dig into that a bit. The KWM starts by focusing on Constable Kimathi's situation. They state his life is in danger just for speaking out against what the KWM describes as government failures. How does the movement leverage his story for their broader call? What's the connection they're making?
Well, the KWM argues his specific case isn't isolated. They position it as an example of a wider truth in Kenya today, which is, according to them, that speaking truth to power often leads to intimidation, maybe even violence. So it's not just one incident, but a symptom of a systemic problem in how things are run. And using a police constable is quite strategic, isn't it? It suggests the issues they're raising, corruption, neglect, they might reach deep into the institutions meant to protect people. That potentially gives their call for change a kind of internal validation, moving it beyond just, external political critique.
Right, that framing is key. So the KWM's message seems to be, Kimathi's story isn't just his own. It represents, in their view, a whole population that feels let down by decades of, promises not kept, systems that don't work, and a government they claim serves itself, not the people. How does the KWM back this up in their statement? What evidence do they point to for this alleged disconnect?
Oh, they lay out quite a list. The statement details what they see as evidence of incompetence, even betrayal. They talk about crumbling roads, impacting daily life and business. They mention underfunded schools where kids are trying to learn in, frankly, poor conditions. Hospitals, they say, lack essential resources, basic care becoming a struggle for ordinary citizens. And then they draw this sharp contrast with politicians reportedly living these luxurious lives, seemingly detached from the struggle. They cite underpaid teachers, classrooms without books, and this widening gap, the rich getting richer, the poor falling further behind. It's a comprehensive list of grievances they present, clearly meant to show a nation under serious strain.
Which brings us right to their main point about timing, urgency. The KWM insists that this crisis, as they see it, it can't just wait for the 2027 election. It's not something you can just schedule for later, right?
Okay. They use this really striking analogy. They compare Kenya to a patient in the ICU. An ICU patient is in immediate danger. You can't tell them, hold on, we'll treat you after the next election cycle. It doesn't work that way. And the KWM argues the nation's in that same critical state. They say infrastructure isn't just old, it's crumbling, actively failing. Schools lacking basic resources, overcrowded classrooms. It's painted as a dire situation for education. The alleged neglect of healthcare, they claim, leads to preventable deaths. That's a very heavy accusation in their material. And then farmers, who they call the backbone of the nation, are described as suffering, lacking support, resources, which has knock-on effects for food security for everyone. So the KWM presents this collection of issues as needing immediate, urgent intervention, not just waiting for a future election.
So the message is stark. Government promises, in the KWM's view, have been empty for too long. Waiting isn't the answer. Change, they argue, has to happen now. It's a very forceful call for immediate action from their perspective.
Right, and this is where their strategy shifts. It moves from identifying problems to proposing a solution, or at least a path forward, which involves collective action. And this is important for you listening. If this message resonates, the KWM makes it clear how you can get involved. They point people towards their website, www.wantamnotam.com. The idea is you can create an account, share your own ideas for change for your village, your city, the whole nation. They really stress this idea of collective power, of individual contributions adding up to something bigger.
That's a very direct call to action, and it connects to another really interesting part of their message. They frame Kimathi's warning not just as his personal warning, but as a kind of collective call to arms for every single Kenyan. That really broadens the responsibility, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Hmm.
And the KWM's call is incredibly wide-ranging. It covers almost every part of society. It's quite fascinating how they break it down group by group, highlighting the specific role they believe each must play. Take doctors and nurses. The KWM calls them frontline warriors. Working tirelessly, often they say, in poorly equipped hospitals, the movement urges them to demand better resources, better conditions, the tools they need to actually save lives, so their role is framed not just within healthcare, but in this bigger push for accountability.
And teachers, too, called the shapers of the future, yet the KWM describes them as underpaid, overworked, struggling with inadequate resources. The movement says, basically, if Kenya's future is to be bright, teachers need respect and support. So their urge to demand better pay, resources, conditions, it's presented as vital for the nation's future.
Definitely. Then they address parents and school children. The state of education, in their words, is a national disaster. Overcrowded classrooms, no books, leaking roofs, that's the picture they paint. So parents are called to demand better for their kids. Their voices matter, is the message. And even the children themselves are encouraged by the KWM to rise up, to fight for the education they deserve, not just accept things as they are.
And it's not just about cities or schools. They highlight farmers, the lifeblood of the nation, as the KWM puts it, but struggling. No support, no subsidies, poor access to resources.
Yeah, the call is for them to demand the support they need. For their survival, sure, but also for the whole country's food security. It really shows how interconnected the KWM sees all these issues. One area impacts another. And they also include the elderly, people who, the KWM says, built this nation, but are now often neglected. The movement calls for them to demand dignity, respect. Their lifetime contributions need to be honored, they argue.
Then there's the youth, identified as the future leaders. But the KWM claims they've been abandoned by a government not creating opportunities.
Exactly. So the call is direct. Demand opportunities. Fight for your future. Don't get left behind. It's a strong appeal to the generation that will inherit whatever comes next. They hold the key, in the KWM's view. And importantly, they explicitly mention people with developmental disabilities, noting they've often been silenced and ignored. The KWM insists their voice is just as important. They must demand the care, support, and respect they deserve. Their future matters too. So putting this all together, the message is absolutely clear from the KWM side. Waiting is over. Change can't wait for 2027. This broad inclusion, it feels like a deliberate strategy to build a truly unified, nationwide movement.
So the KWM isn't framing this as just a political squabble or something for a small group. It's positioned as a fight for every single Kenyan in every county who believes things can be better. It's about changing how the country fundamentally works, driven by the people. Collective action is presented as the only way.
Which leads to their core assertion. Kenya can change. Kenya will change. But there's a condition, right? According to the KWM statement, this only happens if people rise up together, demanding accountability, standing up for their rights. And this, I suppose, poses a question directly to you, the listener, from the KWM's perspective. Are you ready to be part of that?
The KWM essentially says, this is your moment. Act now. Change now. It's not just about one person's warning anymore. It's framed as a unified push for a different future. The government, they state very clearly, must serve the people, or it must be removed. That's a very, very strong call for Kenyans to unite and, in their words, take your country back.
Yeah, and the constant theme running through all of this from the KWM's material is the power of collective action. Every voice, every action, no matter how small it seems, is presented as vital. Individual engagement multiplied across the whole population that's positioned as the key to the systemic change they're advocating for. It's a real grassroots vision.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to think about. Building on what the KWM is urging. What small, concrete step could you take today? Based on these ideas of collective action, demanding accountability, how could you contribute, even in a small way, to the vision of a Kenya that, in the KWM's view, truly serves its people? And remember, if you want to explore more about the Kenya Wantam Notam movement and how they suggest getting involved, you can visit www.wantamnotam.com. Create an account, share your ideas for your village, your city, your nation.
It's definitely food for thought. Understanding these movements, understanding the messages they put out, like this KWM statement, it's crucial. It shows how powerful collective voices can aim to be in shaping a nation's direction.
Thank you for listening to the Kenya Wantam Notam Movement, KWM podcast. We hope this deep dive has provided some clarity and maybe a fresh perspective on the path ahead for Kenya as presented by the movement.